Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely massive. You know, when most people think of the Indian Constitution, they picture this incredibly dense, kind of intimidating legal textbook. But I want us to look at it totally differently today. Imagine it as the ultimate architectural blueprint. This is literally the foundation, the source code, and the structural basis for the world's largest democracy. And honestly, the sheer scale of this blueprint, it's staggering. We're talking about a document that started out with 395 articles and has actually grown to a whopping 448 articles today. That right there just shows you how it's constantly adapting to the changing needs of a modernizing nation. Now, to keep all of this from being pure chaos, those 448 articles are neatly mapped out and organized across 25 distinct parts and 12 schedules.
But before we get completely lost in the numbers, let's just pause and appreciate the absolute ambition of the founders. As our historical sources tell us, the Constituent Assembly was unfettered by any previous commitment in evolving a constitutional pattern suitable to the genius and requirements of the Indian people. Basically, they were handed a blank canvas. They looked around the globe at the UK, the US, Ireland, Australia, and pulled the best elements to build a completely new, sovereign democratic republic. It's just a huge philosophical achievement.
Okay, so to make sense of this massive blueprint, we need a simple mental model. We're going to be throwing around the words parts and articles quite a bit, so just think of a part as a broad thematic chapter. Imagine it's an entire wing of a giant building dedicated to one specific thing. An article, on the other hand, is like a specific room or a specific instruction located exactly inside that wing. Make sense, right? So, to make this whole thing digestible, we've broken the 25 parts down into 5 logical clusters. 1. Foundation. 2. Machinery. 3. Grassroots. 4. Systems. And 5. Safeguards. All right, let's jump right into cluster number 1. Foundation. Territory and citizens covering parts I through IVA. I just love the logical flow of this first section. It makes so much sense. First up, Part I, which spans Articles 1 through 4, establishes the physical land itself, the Union and its territory, right? You need land first. Once you have land, well, you need people. So Part 2 handles citizenship from Articles 5 to 11. Now that you have people, you've got to protect them, which is exactly what Part 3 does. It delivers our fundamental rights up through Article 35. Then, Part 4 shifts gears a bit and gives the state its goals through the directive principles of state policy. And finally, Part IVA, which is literally just one single article, 51A, outlines our fundamental duties as citizens. It's a perfect step-by-step progression: land, then people, rights, state goals, and finally, duties. Moving on to cluster number 2, machinery, union and states, which covers parts V, 8, and X. Okay, real quick, I have to share this incredible little memory trick hidden right inside the blueprint. When you are comparing provisions for the Union versus the states, there is very often this magic difference of exactly 89. Seriously, try it out. Article 74 sets up the Council of Ministers for the President. Add 89 to that, and boom, you arrive at Article 63, which is the Council of Ministers for the State Governor. Same thing with pardon powers. Article 72 is for the president. Add 89 and Article 161 is for the governor. It is just this awesome structural symmetry that makes navigating this beast of a document so much easier. So, looking at the core machinery, Part 5 is the big one for the center. It covers the Union, spanning Articles 52 all the way to 151, setting up the President, Parliament, and the Supreme Court. Then, Part 6 basically mirrors that exact same machinery, but for the states, going from 152 to 237. Now, you might be looking for Part 7. Interestingly, that was completely repealed by the 7th Amendment. It's a great reminder that obsolete parts of the blueprint actually do get scrapped over time. Next, Part 8 handles the Union territories from 239 to 242. And then we have Part 11, covering Articles 245 to 263. This one is absolutely crucial because it dictates the incredibly complex legislative and administrative relationship between the Union and the states. All right, on to cluster number 3, grassroots, local administration covering parts IX and X. This section is all about bringing power straight down to the people. Think of parts IX and X as the grassroots wings of the blueprint. Part I-9 backs rural local government, the panchayats, covering Articles 243 to 243-0.
Immediately following that, Part I-9A handles urban municipalities, and Part I-9B protects cooperative societies, taking us right up to Article 243 ZT. And to make sure this blueprint literally reaches every single corner of the country, Part X, spanning Articles 244 and 244A, is dedicated to the special administration and control of scheduled and tribal areas. Next up is Cluster Number 4, Systems, Finance, and Elections, stretching from Parts 12 through 17. If the previous sections were the engines, think of these parts as the massive administrative wiring that keeps the whole thing from short-circuiting. Part 12 handles the flow of money, meaning finance, property, and contracts, spanning Articles 264 to 300A. Then Part 13 regulates trade and commerce up to Article 307. Parts 14 and 14A set up essential public services and tribunals, all the way through Article 323B. And then we hit an absolutely vital piece of the puzzle, Part 15. This covers elections, spanning Articles 324 to 329A, which is essentially the heartbeat of the entire democracy. Rounding out this section, Part 16 deals with special provisions for certain classes, and Part 17 establishes official languages from Articles 343 to 351.
And that brings us to our final cluster, number 5, Safeguards, Emergencies and Amendments, covering Parts 18 to 22. Every good blueprint needs safety valves, right? Well, Part 18 outlines exactly that, spanning Articles 352 to 360 with emergency provisions meant for national or financial crises. Part 19 throws in some miscellaneous protections. But honestly, Part 20 is perhaps the most powerful part of the entire document. It's just a single article, Article 368, but it holds the actual procedure to amend the Constitution itself. Finally, Parts 21 and 22 handle temporary provisions, short titles, and repeals, officially closing out the massive document at Article 395. Now, I really want to zoom in on Part 20XX, Article 368 for a second, because this is so crucial. This is the exact article that allows the Constitution to be a responsive, living document. It lets Parliament make upgrades, but there is a massive overarching safeguard here. Back in 1973, in the landmark Kesavananda Bharati case, the Supreme Court established the Doctrine of Basic Structure. Basically, this means that while you absolutely can amend the Constitution, you cannot destroy or alter its fundamental ethos. The core DNA, things like democracy, federalism, and fundamental rights, those have to remain completely intact forever. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about. As India continues to rapidly grow and evolve, how will this 25-part living blueprint continue to adapt to future generations without compromising that foundational basic structure? It is a constant, delicate balancing act between flexibility and core identity. Well, that wraps up this explainer. I really hope this structural deep dive has given you a much clearer, more approachable understanding of how the supreme law of the land is actually built. Thanks so much for joining me today. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll catch you next time.